Porter Brooks, and I am your host. Everyone's coming to the party. Don't miss it. Well, welcome to this episode. I'm Porter Brooks, and everything that I'm going to be cooking for you today is restaurant inspired, and it's going to start with a carrot puree. I've got some of these pre-chopped carrots from my grocery store, and I'm going to add them to a couple cups of salted water. We're going to just let those steep until they're nice and soft until we can blend them up. I always start with the thing that takes the longest, and a little bit of mirepoix, which is our holy trinity of onions, carrots, and celery. Well, as I said, today's episode is about restaurant-inspired meals, and I thought I would cook one of my favorite meals from a restaurant in Paris many, many years ago when I was going to school there. It was called Au Gamin de Paris, and it was right on a corner off of Vieille du Temple in Paris, which is in the old district of the Marais. It was such a cool place, really kind of peasant food, everyday food, which is what I enjoy making at home and certainly for guests. Everything is going to be restaurant inspired, and they knew me so well I never even had to order it. I got the chopped filet with the carrot puree and some roasted potatoes every time. I'm going to start with a basic potato which they made in the kitchen, and it's simply a golden potato. You can use a fingerling, and I'm going to be working with a mandolin to get a nice thin even slice. You want to hold it up top and just continue this motion. This is the perfect slicer or dicer. If you'd like to use a food guard, absolutely you can, but I typically go just about 3/4 of the way down the potato. I couldn't figure out how they do this for so many years until I got into the kitchen and I found out that they use a miniature fry pan. So I'm going to take away my mandolin, set that aside, and now I'm going to add some butter to this miniature cast iron pan that I've got warmed up. A nice chunk of butter. Butter and potatoes, we're already off to a really good start. You can make sure the heat is on its lowest point. Now look at these beautiful tiles, or tuile is the French word for tile, and I'm just going to layer them in the bottom of the pan. I think one of the secrets is getting the potatoes so thin that all the starches come together and they coagulate. Now when you're working with a potato like this, you definitely want to use heavy seasoning because all of that starch is going to absorb all your salt. So you're going to feel like you're over salting, but it's definitely the way to go. Let's put that in there. Okay. So on that note, some beautiful French gray salt. And I'm going to cheesy these babies up with some grated parm. That looks perfect. And these had black pepper. I remember seeing the speckles in there. Okay. Take that. We'll just tighten those down into the bottom of the pan. You can hear the bubbles coming up. One more dollop of butter on the top. Never light on the butter, especially whole cream French butter. Then I'm going to take these and I'm going to pop this right into the oven and let them sear and bake up. Okay. All right, next up is what I call a faux demi-glace. And what I've done is I've taken some beef stock, you can use veal stock if you like, and we've warmed it up until it's reduced. One of the secrets in a demi-glace is, of course, whipping butter in at the very last minute. And that gives it that glossy texture. So again, we're beef or chicken stock, or both combined, and we're reduced about 8 cups to 4 cups. It's great to do this overnight, or if you'd like, what I tend to do is I make it a few days ahead and I freeze it in small dairy cups, like yogurt cups with the lids, and I just pop them in the freezer. That way you can pop out a single cup serving each and every time, and you've got a very sophisticated, easy, beautiful gravy. Now you see how glossy and shiny that is, all coming up to the perfect demi-glace. All right, Wonderful. Oh, it smells good. That is really great. It's peppery. There's a little bit of red wine to that. Fantastic. Okay, off to our carrot puree. We'll turn this off. And I wanted to show you our carrots and our mirepoix as they've been just poaching, basically. We're getting a nice boil on those. All right, we've had talks about hot liquids before. I'm coming over to my processor, and you'll want to use a slotted spoon when transferring into a food processor just to make sure everything is safe. Just pop a couple of spoonfuls of your puree. Oh, just is such a fresh and simple flavor. Now, if you're a fan of squash, feel free to use some sweet potato sticks or some yellow squash cubes. It'll work just the same way, but the carrot is a really stiff puree, and it's going to line right on the bottom of the plate. I also love the color of this when it hits the plate and it's sitting next to those potatoes. Okay, so we've got our puree in place. Make sure that that's good, and grab a ladle. Oops, there it goes. Grab a ladle and just add just a teeny bit of the cooking water. Now, we're going to add slowly because we want this to be nice and thick. Let me get that out of the way so you can see. Pop in, and always with a hot liquid, we want to pulse and use a rag for protection on the top. So we're just going to start a quick grind and then a full grind. I'm going back the other direction. All right, let's see how that looks. I love the color already coming through the food processor. That is perfect. Let me grab a pan. Okay, carrot puree. How easy is that? We'll just pop that in. Set that aside. You can see the beautiful colors coming through. Now, I talked about the consistency, and really we want this to be very, very firm. We don't want it to be runny on the plate. So we're just going to add a dab more butter right into that and mix it up. All right, when we come back, I'm going to show you how our filet comes together and our herb potatoes for our restaurant-inspired episode. I'll be right back. Well, if you're just joining us, I'm Porter Brooks, and this is our restaurant-inspired episode. I'm making these great dishes from a favorite place of mine in Paris. It's basically chopped filet mignon with a really great demi-glace gravy, which has been on the stove, and then we're gonna finish it with some beautiful carrot puree. I added a little butter when you were away, and I corrected the seasoning with some salt, but I really want you to see these potatoes. Let me check in the oven. And this is exactly how those fantastic potatoes come out. They bring them right to the table. So good. You saw how easy that was. Just a couple very, very simple steps. Okay, so let's get on to our chopped filet. Honestly, I'd never had filet prepared this way. Typically, it's in a nice, beautiful, very expensive steak. But as I said, this is really kind of the land of the peasant. And it's cubed into small pieces. I'm using my grandfather's old cleaver, by the way. I swear it's just as sharp as it was when he was alive. It's always fun to cook with pieces that actually mean something to you. So our basic flavors are really simple and basic, and by that I mean some garlic, some green herbs, and some salt and black pepper. That faux demi-glace that I made for you is going to really carry the flavor. Just turn the meat and go ahead and cut yourself a couple more cubes. Once and a half should do it. I like nice big bites, so they're rare in the middle. Again, if you'd like it cooked a little bit more through, then you can leave it in a little bit longer. Cast iron is what this episode seems to be all about, and I'm convinced that it's part of the flavor profile that you get in these great cafes. Using good seasoned pans, which evenly distribute the heat, is always a plus. Okay, my filet is into bite-sized pieces. I'm gonna wash my hands on that. Now, let's give it some salt at the very last minute. And a little bit of pepper right on the top. And I'm going to mix all of these flavors together in my filet, and adding just a little bit of garlic to my warming olive oil right in the middle. And again, we're going to put butter in that pan because oil and butter together have a lower smoking point. We're looking for a really great saute on these pieces of beautiful filet. All right, this is how you do it. You pick it up and you drop it all in a super hot skillet. I like to distribute everything evenly. Now, don't touch a thing. We're gonna let it sit there and get perfectly caramelized and brown on the bottom of each of those pieces. It'll take about 2 minutes on high, and then we're going to flip them over. I can see the juices coming through the filet. Now, I want to add a little bit more texture like they used to do. So I'm going to get some mushrooms and just break a few mushrooms into quarters right on top. I love these pre-cleaned, prepped items that you can get from the store, just like our mirepoix. So I'm going to quarter those, drop those in, probably about 3, I would say. You can hear that boil coming up. 2, we'll do this one. 3, why not do the 4th? I like a good mushroom, and it really is a great flavor. All right, we're going to stir that in, reduce our heat. Now the last thing is a beautiful element of something creamy, and I'm sure they probably used some very fattening whole cream, but I'm actually going to work with a fat-free yogurt, and I'm just going to mix that in, and you see how that gravy is coming all together right there. Oh man, I could smell it. When I would go to this place in the summer, they would set me by the window, and when I would go in the winter, they'd set me right by the fireplace, and I could hear them yelling and screaming in the kitchen from below. Kind of reminded me of my grandparents' restaurant when I was a kid, and boy, it came out piping hot, and it was perfect every single time. Okay, my job now is going to be to get this out to my restaurant-inspired table. I'm going to show you some really great tricks on how to recreate a setting from a different place in your house. We're going to add our little pichet of wine and our used wine bottle and some wonderful things that are going to make it great for you and your guests. Today it's just me because I always ate alone, but do this at home and do it for a guest. I'll be right back. Well, if you're just joining us, I'm Porter Brooks, your host, and we have created a restaurant-inspired meal. I've been telling stories about going to school in Paris, France, and finding all these great restaurants, these nooks and crannies that are hidden away. I'm sure if you're at all a globetrotter, whether it be across the world or maybe just downtown, you've had the same experience. My philosophy is so simple. From a memory, you can make a memory. Just go back to that favorite meal at that favorite place and work on the basic flavors, and I promise you, you can recreate any special meal from a special time and place in life. It's the same idea as the smell of your mother's cooking or a song that you hear while driving down the road on the radio. All right, well, I've created Au Gamin de Paris, my favorite little restaurant, and this is exactly how they'd serve me every time, on a simple table against a brick wall with a fireplace going and a window in the summer. What I loved is they never even changed out the candles. They would continue just to throw tea lights on a saucer and relight them and relight them. So I've done that just to show you today exactly how it was years ago when I went to school in Paris. And of course, the amazing baguette slicer, which is as French as they come, this huge knife. And this is how they would the madame would absolutely chop all the bread, and you get these small pieces, and usually just in a basket or right on the table. Always a Frenchy cloth as a napkin, which are available online and all over. They're so simple and they're really inexpensive, which means you can throw them away if you don't, if you stain them with the red wine. And speaking of which, in France, they always offer a table wine, and quite frankly, it's really excellent. And this is what is called a cap pichet, or a demi pichet is a half a pitcher, and a cap pichet is a quarter. And I always would get a quarter and cap pichet de vin rouge of red wine, and they send it in a little carafe, and you pour your own glass of wine. So that's how they bottle it. I think that's probably a pretty good place to start when it comes to getting into the meal that we've just spent together. So first, let's get a sip to Au Gourmand and all the great memories that are restaurant inspired. That is really good. Okay, here's what I just made you all. Look how beautiful our potatoes came out of that individual cast iron skillet, and my chunky filet with those fantastic mushrooms, a little chive on the top, which is what they used to do, or a little parsley. I have to have a bite of that. Oh, just beautiful. Now take note at how dark the sauce is. Even though I added that non-fat Greek yogurt to give it some consistency to hold together, it's not a heavy cream sauce, which is always the way they did it. I like it rare, so I'm gonna dig in and take a nice bite of my beautiful filet. Excellent. Really, really good, you guys. I want you to try this at home. You see, I'm also eating as the French do, with the knife and the fork, and it's more of a poke and scoop technique actually than what we do here in the States. All right, I'm crazed for these potatoes, and it's been years since I've had them. So let me jump into these, get a little bit of that sauce. There it is. Now, do you notice how thin they are? That's exactly the reason why they cook so quickly. It was under 10 minutes we had these golden brown potatoes. Crunchy on the top, soft and buttery in the middle, warm, really, really a Frenchy flavor. So you can do this. It's home fries kicked up the French way. I gotta have another one of those. All right. One of the things that I loved about this restaurant is they always put these additional flavorings, herbs and spices and seasoning. This is culinary lavender, and they used to have it on the table so that if you wanted to add a certain flavor, you could to whatever you had ordered. And of course, the famous celery, the French gray salt, which is hand harvested by women with rakes in the southern region of France, always salt in a pestle, which I think is just really earthy, and I think it's a great way to serve your guest. All right, so we were touring around, and the other addition is from Dijon, France. They had these miniature croques with Dijon, and this little spoon made just for the Dijon mustard, and you could put a little bit on your potato and a little bit on your filet. Lots of different ways you can eat it, and I love entertaining like this because your guests have the opportunity to dig into so many different flavors. I want to taste the mustard on that filet. Now it's tasting like home. And you notice how firm the mushrooms are, not overcooked at all. I'm loving this. I'm just being brought back right to a fantastic memory. A sip of red is always good, and you feel like you're living like a king. I used to love how they would tablescape it out with an old wine bottle with some paper wrapped around it and a single stem of whatever fresh flowers that were on the corner that day. All right, now I'd like to talk to you about the carrot puree. Look how bright that is on the plate. This is exactly how they'd served me on this old oval plate. And taste, see, the firmness is what I was after. It sits right on the fork. Oh my gosh, that's good. You can really taste the sea salt. Wonderful. All right, one last bite of everything together. A big bite. Restaurant inspired is so simple. It's such an easy way to entertain. As I've always said, you already know. You know the secrets of the flavors that you're really after. One sip and then we get on to the dessert. Okay, well, everything comes with dessert in France. It's basically sacrilegious if you didn't have dessert. And they had this fantastic almond tart. Sometimes it was a tart citron. This one was marzipan that I remember. I'm just going to reach over and get to it and show that to you. And I got some help on that. A beautiful, beautiful piece of almond tart. And they would always serve it with the pizza knife because it cuts perfectly. And in fact, I actually went and bought a set of these. The angle of the knife is great for a tart. And of course, you can't have the tart. Oh, that's wonderful. Without an espresso. The espresso, which would come at the end with a lemon rind twist to go right on. Flavors, the smells. It's all about what's in the DNA and the memories. Well, there you have it. Restaurant inspired. I'm Porter Brooks, and if you'd like all these recipes, if you'd like to get inspired, tweet me at @theporterbrooks, follow me online, and enjoy restaurant-inspired meals wherever you've been. I'm your host, Porter Brooks, and I will see you next time as I entertain the world one table at a time.